Good morning, everybody, and it's so nice to see you. I just want to give you a little bit more information about myself before I give my talk this morning on social justice in the world of higher education. I am a graduate of the College of Idaho. I graduated in 1983, last century. I am a poet. I've published 5 books of poetry. Almost all of them deal in some way with social justice issues. I'm a mother. I'm now a grandmother as well. My oldest daughter graduated from the College of Idaho, and she now has a PhD in marine biology. My youngest daughter also currently goes to the College of Idaho, so I'm a walking advertisement ambassador for the College of Idaho, and for that I feel very grateful. I feel very blessed to be here in all of my capacities. It is true that I teach in the English department a variety of different courses, and I also co-direct the program in criminal justice studies. We have a very innovative program in criminal justice studies, and I will be referring to that a little bit as I go on. But it's so nice to see you here this morning. Thank you for this great opportunity. So because I teach at this wonderful liberal arts college, and because the term liberal arts is a translation of the Latin terms for skills of the free man, or I would add the free woman, I see it as my responsibility, and it is also my passion, my calling, and my honor to teach students the skills and arts of how to become free in their lives as citizens. Because I am an individual conferred with many levels of privilege, and because I have studied, written about, and fought relentlessly for my own and others' personal and political freedoms, I see it as my duty, both as a poet and as a professor, to question on the page and in my classrooms what these terms mean over and over again. What does it even mean to be free? What does it mean to be a citizen with rights? Which citizens have the most rights, and why? Which citizens have been stripped of their rights, and why? And by whom? Who among us has rights that feel under threat of erosion? You're too polite to raise your hands. Who among us feels we might have been denied rights simply for being who we feel ourselves to be? What might this mean for our futures? How will we ever really know if we are truly free? What will be the signs? How will we read them? And in whose interest is it to curtail the freedoms of certain segments of society? And which freedoms exactly? Who has the power, the wherewithal, the will? Who owns the wealth? Why? I could go on and on with such questions, and in my classrooms, I do. In my poetry, I do. So the topic of my talk is supposed to be social justice and its place in higher ed, but honestly, that would suggest that social justice is some kind of a sidebar issue, a trendy phrase to apply to only a few trendy professors for one very difficult phase in American history. Or perhaps even worse, to only bring up such issues on the occasion of the day that honors one of our most important leaders, Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. So the PhD is the degree that teachers in higher ed most commonly have. To quote a recent headline from the British daily newspaper The Guardian, a PhD should be about improving society. So I want to argue for something larger than the title of this talk might want to contain. I want to argue that teaching with an eye toward cultivating human emancipation, for nurturing individual and collective freedom, is at the very heart of a first-rate liberal arts education such as we offer here at the College of Idaho. Toni Morrison, one of America's greatest writers, and perhaps one of the greatest writers of all time ever anywhere to exist, said to her students, "Just remember that your real job is that if you are free, you need to free somebody else. If you have some power, then your job is to empower somebody else." Another American great, June Jordan, the poet who lived from 1936 to 2002, said the poet is somebody free. So by these definitions, and practically in terms of my very job description, the whole point of what I do every day, as a mother, as now a grandmother, as a poet, as a college professor, is to free and empower others. How do I do this? I begin by talking about the ethical and political demands of democratic culture and public responsibility. To talk of such demands, I arm my students and my grown children with accurate information. Within what is now a largely fact-resistant culture, I provide facts and statistics to my classes almost daily, which may seem weird for an English professor. But here goes. In the largest economy in the world, the United States, 40 million people live below the poverty level. That is roughly 12.2% of the population. From 2002 to 2010, 88% of factory jobs have been lost to automation, not to immigration, not to people with brown skin. For some more positive news, the United States has arguably produced some of the greatest movies the world has ever seen. The United States has more student loan debt than anywhere else in the world. But don't worry, we offer so many scholarships here at the College of Idaho. We help you out. The United States makes some of the most beautiful promises in its founding documents, including those for freedom and justice for all. Every day in my personal life and in my life as an educator, I try to hold this great country accountable to those promises and to hold myself accountable to those promises. The United States puts more people behind bars per capita than any other country in the world. Specifically, nearly 1 out of every 100 people in the United States is in federal, state, or local prison. We incarcerate roughly 2.2 million people presently. 3/4 of them are behind bars for nonviolent crimes in the land of the free. And roughly 92% of them will end up back among us as our neighbors, as our co-workers, as our fellow community members. Thus, I open up this hidden world to students at the College of Idaho. In a course that I teach each winter called the Prison Experience, I'm presently teaching it, well, not right now, but sort of. I bring students inside our valley's prisons and jails, safe houses, and juvenile detention centers. In essence, bringing down the wall, separating the incarcerated and the free. Thus, students from the College of Idaho are able to look the inmates in the eye and discover that, alas, they are not the monsters caricatured in our favorite television series, nor are they the caricatures in a variety of the Netflix series that we so love to watch. Sometimes students pet the dogs that are being trained in the dog training portion of the prisons, those dogs that we all so love to adopt out later. Sometimes students shake the hands of these men and these women, these boys and girls who live within these razor-wired worlds. Higher education, at its best, does the bridging work between school and the wider society, between soul and world, between self and other. It allows students to translate private troubles into broader systemic considerations. Higher ed exemplifies the idea that democracy is a way of life, an ethical ideal that demands active and constant attention. And if we fail to work at creating and recreating democracy, there is no guarantee that it will survive. Another underreported fact that I like to share with students: non-voters represent the largest political party, if you will, within the United States. The highest voter turnout in the United States in 1960, 1 year before I was born. And do you know what the highest predictor, the best predictor of voter turnout is? Educational attainment. Only 33% of this nation will graduate from college. And I'm confident that all of you today will be among those who do. So come to the College of Idaho, where we will help ensure that you do. I cannot be objective, right? I'm totally for the College of Idaho. So I am not alone in the opinion that it is the duty of everyone in higher ed, and particularly within liberal arts colleges, to educate toward freedom, toward civic duty, toward intellectual independence. It is our duty in higher ed to create a language of possibility, a framework for how things could be and how things should be. It is our responsibility, and indeed our privilege, to create a language for what kind of world seems right and seems fair and seems merciful for our young people and for generations to come. And we in higher ed should be taking the voices of our young people very seriously and modeling our discourse and our political behavior after theirs. We should note how young brown, Black, and Indigenous climate change activists have courageously stood up to powerful interests in the United States and beyond. These brave young people remind us how fights for justice intersect. We should make more of our classrooms places where people are not afraid to engage in critical discussions that call into question difficult political times such as our own. We as teachers and students both should be prepared to engage in risk and to feel vulnerability and to feel safe. Our classrooms should mark out a protective space that should be open to critical teaching and critical learning. And not only should such a classroom be a place to think, engage in critical dialogue, and encourage human potential, as well as contribute to the vibrancy of a democratic culture, it should also be a place in which students and teachers learn to think and act together. This means sharing the learning with you. This means sharing the freedom with you. Again, the College of Idaho is where I did my own undergraduate work, majoring in English and modern languages. And way back then is when I learned that I had the privilege and the great honor of being a lifelong learner. I love being in the classroom, not because I love the sound of my own voice, and I love to be the sole voice alone in front as I am just now, but I love to learn. And every day when I'm in a classroom, I get to learn, and that's what keeps me motivated in my work. So, perhaps that means sharing the podium with you. Does anybody want to come up here and add something? Do you have a question? I can open it up now to some Q&A if you have any questions for me. And I can walk. Wait, does this work? Hello? Is it on? Is this working? Now I can be kind of a lounge lizard. I had to follow my notes, but now I can bag those and just take your questions if you have any. Yes?
So I assume philosophy and such would fall under your department?
It falls within my division. Philosophy and religion are in the humanities division, but not within my department. We are on the same floor as philosophy and religion, or at least I am. English is kind of scattered among different buildings, but I am in the same building as philosophy and religion.
Intersect between the philosophy and religion and some of the things that you're talking about with social justice, those courses interact?
Yes, for example, there's an ethics course taught within the philosophy department in which our criminal justice minors in the humanities were taking a class the other day, and the philosophy professor stepped out of the room and into my office, and she talked about the essay that they were jointly working on within the classroom. And so we do a lot of interdisciplinary work in a lot of our majors and minors, and that's just one example. Yeah, good question. Other questions? Yes. Okay, that's a great question. Rarely is it this large, but one of my most revered colleagues, who's now retired, was a sociologist, and we used to team teach a lot of courses together, one of them being the prison experience, which I have to cap at 25 or so just for safety reasons. I have to turn really tens of students away because we can't have that many people there. But we used to like to team teach courses even beyond that one, and one of the courses that we team taught was called People and Plagues, and we just decided we were not going to cap that course. So we had 90 students in that class, which was an aberration. But we just thought, if people want to take this course, it's winter session, why should we turn anybody away? But we both found that we were not able to do the kinds of things that we usually like to do, work in small groups and have it a discussion type of course. So yeah, that's easily the largest course that I've ever had, 90 some. But that was with teaching with somebody else. Usually it's about 18, or sometimes a little bit less, sometimes a few more. Yes. Was there a hand up over here? Yes. How does the what?
So you said winter session. I was wondering about the pattern of days and courses.
Okay, so if you've glanced at our calendar, or even if you haven't, you'll notice that we have basically a semester system with a winter session in between fall and spring. So our fall and spring semesters are 12 weeks long, and every 6 weeks we have a break. or that is, you guys have a break, and we do a lot of grading on our part. So after the first 6 weeks of fall semester, there's a 1 week break. We grade like mad demons, and we get out the midterm grades. You get your midterm grades, and by the end of that week off, you go back and you have 6 weeks left of fall term. End of fall term, the holiday vacation, and we come back in January for a 3.5-week winter session. It keeps changing. It used to be 6 weeks long, but now it's about 3.5 weeks long. You take one course very intensively. For example, the prison experience course. You hop on the buses, we go visit prisons and jails, and you immerse yourself in one particular, often very high impact course that's innovative and experimental in nature. And all you think about for those 3.5 weeks is that one amazing course. After that, you get about a week off, and then we start spring term, 12 weeks with a 1-week break in the middle, spring break. Does that help clarify? Yes?
What have been some of your study abroad experiences in your major?
My colleague, who's now a professor emerita, the sociologist, Robin Lawrenson and I took students in 2000 to Cuba. We like to take students to places that are sort of forbidden as a general rule, and to shed the light. So that's the last study abroad course that I did, because I was always raising children, and I didn't want to be away from my kids for too long. So in 2000, we went to Cuba. We toured the whole island. It was fascinating and incredible. The food was amazing. The people were very welcoming and generous, and it was a trip of a lifetime. So that's the one course that I've done off campus. But perhaps now that my kids are raised, I could do some more. But I see going to prison as almost like going to a different country, because we know so little about what goes on inside until we take this course. Other questions? There are other trips that go everywhere from London, Australia, Hawaii, Thailand, Israel. Oh, I did go to Israel, that's right. I took my youngest daughter. We went to Israel, Palestine. That was an incredible trip that I recommend. It's still on the books. Yes, thank you. Jogged my memory. Other questions? No more questions? Yes, there's one. Well, we have roughly 6 people in the English department, so you'd have the opportunity to take, and you will take courses from a variety of different professors. You'd surely get tired of taking the same courses from the same professor over and over and over. So almost every department has a range of professors to choose from, and we very much encourage your doing so. We don't want you to hear from only one voice over and over. That would be too redundant. There you go. Yes. This is kind of fun. Okay. Yes. I'll be Ellen DeGeneres. Yes.
You said that a lot of your poetry revolves around social justice.
Yes.
I was just curious, like, which intersections of social justice you like to talk about?
That's a great question. I had a book published in 2013 called American Amnesiac. Actually, it was longlisted for the National Book Award. And at the time, Barack Obama had just been elected president. And while I and many others were exulting over this historic fact, I also was becoming very nervous about where the country was headed and how it was going to break down along racial lines. I had been also charting poverty rates in America for a very long time. I was almost a history major also as a graduate of the College of Idaho. I took a whole bunch of American history courses. So I've had my eye on America for decades, and I could see many, many changes happening that I did not see getting airplay on the news. I did not hear being discussed in classes. So in that book, I was able to create a stew, if you will, of so many of the issues that were starting to take place in the United States that I could see happening over time. Dramatically high poverty rates, dramatically high incarceration rates, environmental degradation, racial fear-mongering. The list is very, very long. So I was able, through the voice of this book-length dramatic monologue, to encapsulate and reckon with this variety of issues that characterize our America today. And it actually sort of foresaw some of the increasing problems that we see now, which I won't go into. But all of our issues, are from climate change to poverty, intersect. Climate change, of course, is going to most dramatically and most negatively affect people of color and poor communities. So all of our political concerns are marked by intersectionality, and you'll hear discussions about such matters in a lot of the courses that you take. I hope that answers. The book takes on virtually everything. It was very cathartic to take on. I tried in the course of that book to reframe how America could go. But alas, it did not go that way. But I tried. I did my level best.
Thank you, Diane.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Please, another round of applause for Dr. Raptosh.
Thank you.